Welcome, everyone, to Color Commentary. We are your popper commentators, Michael Petchik and Adrian Guarzales. How's it going, Adrian?
Oh, I think you know.
Is it good?
It is good. You are right.
Good. I didn't play Magic this week. Did you?
Yeah, I went 2-1 with Pig Trinket at F&M. I lost to Garrett, our local mono black player. I had to mull to 5 on game 3, and it was actually a pretty close game. If I hadn't had to go to 5, I think I would have gotten it because he actually had no cards in his hand, and then with like 8 swamps on the battlefield, he top decked Corrupt. So it was sweet, and it was a good example of like games 1 and 2 took forever, and then game 3 we only had 10 minutes, so we were able to play pretty fast without sacrificing too much. I think we both played our best in that game. It's just an example of like when two players who know their decks really well can get together and play really, really quickly so that they don't go to time.
Yeah, just jamming through a bunch of stuff, knowing what the other side of the matchup looks like as well, so you can make your decisions a little bit quicker.
Right.
Yeah, no, I skipped out in F&M this week because I had to come home and watch my dog because my wife's been working a bunch, but still very much paying attention to stuff. This is a big episode. We got a deck tech that's tangentially related to our discussion topic for today, but next week is spoiler
big, he
season.
Means long.
What?
Said by big he means long.
Yeah, we've got spoiler season coming up, so the hype train is a pulling into the station. But let's talk about some Tron. This week we're going to talk about Red Green Tron, which had a couple of 5-0s this season. Kind of had this period where it was getting played, and it is kind of the midway point between the more traditional kind of Rug Tron lists that dominated for so long and the mono green Tron list. So, you're getting a bit of the big mana thing, and then you're also getting a lot of spicy sideboard stuff. I'm just going to get into this, I think. Starting off the list is 2 copies of Fierce Empath, which is 2 and a green for 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for a creature with converted mana cost 6 or greater.
And that's what we're all about.
Yeah, notably, this is the only creature in the deck with a mana cost of less than 6.
Right.
So this kind of just becomes, what would it be? Worldly Tutor? Is that the creature one?
Yeah.
But
worse.
Yeah.
Worldly Tutor, but worse.
Yeah, Worldly Tutor, but worse. In this deck, it's basically Worldly Tutor, but sake of argument. And this is kind of one of those things I've seen in Tron a couple times. It's really neat because it lets you get those late game threats immediately rather than having to run a bunch of card draw to get to them. So, it is what it is. 4 copies of your least favorite card in the world, Fangren Marauder.
Yeah, that card, what a design choice. What...
5 and
magic broken, quitting.
5 and a green for a 5/5 whenever an artifact leaves play or goes to the graveyard from the battlefield, gain 5 life.
Yeah. Whoever thought of that one was, frankly, an idiot.
Well, I mean, this was what? Mirrodin Besieged? Like, this was an Artifacts Matter block, and, green
Mike,
has to...
be real. This is basically Black Lotus staple to Ancestral Recall. Let's be honest with ourselves. It's the worst.
And this has been a staple in the Rug Tron list for a long time because it works really well with the artifact suite that we'll see later. Next, we got 2 copies of Accomplished Automaton. Don't cast me or my tiny son ever again. 7 mana for a 5/7 with Fabricate 1. So you either get it with a +1/+1 counter, so you get a 6/8, or you get a 1/1 servo.
Those are both good.
What are your thoughts on this card? Because I remember you not being a fan of it when we did the set review for Kaladesh.
I mean, it's whatever. It has Edict protection. It's Tron. It's a Tron creature. Like you can play it the turn you get Tron.
Yeah, and it does represent a very difficult to deal with threat. Like barring If you make the token, there's no way to deal with it without 2 pieces of removal, which is kind of neat.
Right.
Next, we got Maul Splicer. Maul Splicer is 6 and a green for a 1/1. But when it comes into play, you get 2 3/3 colorless golems, and golem creatures you control have trample.
And I like this as a one of. This card is strong, and I mean, I guess like every card, this card is really good in some situations and really bad in other situations. But 6 trample power spread over 2 creatures is nothing to sneeze at. Again, really only playable in a Tron list. You would need a Prophetic Prism and Tron to cast this, but it serves its purpose.
Yeah, I mean, it would be better in this list if Accomplished Automaton. Accomplished Automaton has to be a construct, right? I'm sorry, I need to just double check this one here, because if that's a golem, the stock of
Yeah, it's a construct.
Okay, it's a construct. Okay, wonderful. Yeah. I was gonna say, if Accomplished Automaton was a golem, Maul Splicer would feel way better.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought of that. That's a construct.
But yeah, Maul Splicer, sometimes shows up as a one of in Tron lists. It's, a pretty decent finisher if you can recur it in any way or flicker it. It goes a little nuts. Next on the list, we've got 2 copies of Wretched Griff, which is 7 colorless for a 3/4 with flying. When you cast it, draw a card, and it has emerge 6 and a green, or 6 and a blue, sorry.
Yeah, and I imagine that this is mostly trying to ape Muldrifter without having to actually get too far into blue. I will point out there is a one of Unknown Shores in the list, as well as the standard spheres, stars, and prisms. So casting it for its emerge cost isn't unthinkable, but it definitely doesn't give you the liability of having to cast it for the blue mana.
Yeah, you're not priced into that being the only mode you really care about. But, obviously this is great with Fierce Empath, because then it's a 4 mana 3/4 draw card.
Right.
And you're down a 1/1 that's already served its purpose. And to round off the creature suite, we got 3 copies of Ulamog's Crusher. 8/8, must attack each turn, costs 8 mana.
Everyone's favorite common Eldrazi.
And has Annihilator too. Actually, I'm going to counter that with the fact that my favorite common Eldrazi is probably Sky Spawner.
Well, what do you know?
I mean, I just like Sky Spawner. I think it's a really efficient, grindy card versus Crusher, which is kind of just a sledgehammer. But, opinions,
They do
right?
different things.
Yeah,
what about Eldrazi Devastator?
I think Eldrazi Devastator is actually unplayable in this format.
What about Hand of Emrakul?
I don't even remember what that one does. I know that's the one where you can pop Eldrazi Spawn to cast it.
It's not as good. It's a 9 mana 7/7 with Annihilator 1. Why would you play that?
Yeah, but you can pop 4 Eldrazi Spawn or something to cast it instead, right?
Yeah, I mean that's true.
Again, Crusher is definitely the one that people care about in this format. This has to be one of the biggest threats that we have in the format as well, just in terms of sheer volume.
I'm pretty sure it is the biggest creature in the format.
Well, Devastator is bigger because it's an 8/9, but it's also not
whatever.
As good.
Yeah, the biggest playable creature. Excuse me.
Yeah, definitely. Next, moving into the spells, we got 4 copies of Ancient Stirrings, and correct me if I'm wrong here, it's a sorcery for green. You look at the top 5 and you pick a colorless card from among them and put it into your hand.
Yep, you put the rest on the bottom.
Okay, yeah, rest on the bottom. Is it random order or order of your choosing? Not that it matters.
Order of your choosing. I don't think there are any cards that put stuff on the bottom in a random order, are there?
Cascade.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay.
Okay. So
wow, that's random.
Yeah, Cascade puts them back on the bottom of your library in a random order.
How do you do that?
You take the cards you have, you shuffle them up, and you put them underneath your library.
Mike, that's too technical for me. All right. Anyway, yeah, it's in order of your choice. I'm fairly sure. If it's not, someone will undoubtedly correct us.
So this hits, most of our big threats. It hits lands. This just seems quality in this deck.
Yeah, Ancient Stirrings is a staple of Tron lists because it gets everything they want.
And especially in modern, correct? Like a lot of the modern Tron lists run Ancient Stirrings as their dig card.
Yeah, that's why it's so expensive.
Next, we got Crop Rotation, 4 copies of it. Green has an additional cost to cast it, sacrifice a land, and you search your library for a land and put it into play.
Now, that's spicy. That's traditionally not a card a lot of lists play. It helps you get Tron, certainly, but it's just not that common of a card.
Well, more impressive than that is it misses the words basic and tapped. So you can late game, for example, turn a forest into another Urza's Tower if you need the 3 extra mana. Like you can use it as this weird ritual. And when we get to the lands, there's a little bit of a toolbox with some interesting effects in it that we'll talk about. But Crop Rotation, spicy little meatball. We got
too hot.
We got 2 copies of Rolling Thunder. X red deals X damage divided however you choose among any number of creatures and or players.
Yeah, this card is great because it's either a board wipe or it wins you the game.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever cast Rolling Thunder and been like, well, that felt subpar. Like it's usually in the Tron decks, it's either saving you from impending board presence or it's just ending the game.
Right.
And this card is absurd. Like compare this to like Fireball. This is just worlds better. Rounding out our spells, we got a copy of Pulse of Marasa, 2 and a green, instant, return a creature land from your graveyard to your hand, gain 6 life. We've talked about it ad nauseum at this point, and it's a good card.
This card make good.
Artifacts, we've got 4 copies Chromatic Sphere, 4 copies Chromatic Star, 4 copies Expedition Map, and 4 copies of Prophetic Prism.
These are all pretty part and parcel with Tron. Not only does sacrificing the Sphere, Stars, and Map get you life off your Finger Marauder, Expedition Map is a card that will set you up for Tron, and then Sphere and Star help you color fix early on in the game as well as dig for more pieces. So really, you have to have all of them, and then Prophetic Prism fixes your Tron lands into color-producing lands because otherwise you can't cast any of your spells.
Yeah, and especially like that Rolling Thunder, that double red is a little tricky to hit off of just Stars and Spheres. So Prism seems good here. Also, the draw card text is never, unwelcome. Now we move into the lands, and this is where things get a little spicy. So we got 1 copy of Haunted Fengraf, which is the one that taps for a colorless, and then you can pay 3 and sacrifice it to get a creature card at random from your graveyard to your hand. So this is uncounterable recursion, basically. Next, we got a single copy of Mountain. Then 1 copy of Sajiri Step, which is kind of interesting. Sajiri Step is a land that enters the battlefield tapped. It taps for white, but when it enters the battlefield, target creature gains protection from the color of your choice until end of turn.
So this is the spicy Crop Rotation target, letting you give your creature effectively hexproof if someone tries to kill it. Obviously, it doesn't work against edicts, but useful against spot removal.
And it could also, get a creature in against a monocolor deck or a deck that just has, 1 color of blockers up.
Right.
Just pretty neat, or if your opponent has a combat trick and you want to be able to survive it, there's options here. Next, we've got 3 copies of Tree of Tales. This is the green artifact land, and this lets your crop rotations with Fangren Marauder get a little bit of value here. I'm not sure how much I like these over just a forest.
In this deck, I would say it doesn't really matter. I don't really think there's a reason to play one over the other than the fact that these get blown up by artifact destruction. I actually don't really see a reason to play these over a forest, because if you're arguing that it'll help you dodge Wrench Mind, your deck is full of artifacts, and if you're arguing that it's a Trinket Mage target, the deck doesn't run Trinket Mage. So yeah, I'm a little unsure about. It might just be a style choice. It might just be a.
I mean,
I don't really know.
If your lands get blown up, it does gain you some life off your Fangren Marauder, but like, I don't know.
That is true.
It doesn't seem like a huge reason to kind of, potentially open yourself up to something like an Ancient Grudge.
Right, but there's no reason not. I mean, that's the big reason not to play them, I guess. But it's not like you're running Evolving Wilds or Ash Barrens or Terramorphic or anything. So it's not like they're unfetchable lands because you're not fetching them. But yeah. I don't really know. There's no real reason. There's no improvised cards. Not that that would matter. This already taps for mana. So
moving on, we've got a copy of Unknown Shores, the Prophetic Prison on a land. Just taps for a colorless, or it taps and pay one generic, and you get a mana of any color. Again, goes in most Tron lists. And then, of course, we have 4 of each of the Tron pieces: the Mine, the Power Plant, and the Tower. I do want to quickly move into the sideboard because the sideboard has got some real spice in it. We've got 1 copy of Bojuka Bog, the black land that enters tapped, and when it enters the battlefield, target player exiles their graveyard. Again,
that's good with crop rotation.
Yeah, it's another crop rotation target. You can instant speed, get your valuable, or get your opponent off whatever graveyard shenanigans they're trying to do. 3 copies of Electrickery, 1 red, ping an opponent's creature, 1 and a red, you deal 1 to each creature your opponent controls. Pretty good against, Delver, that sort of thing. 3 Pyroblasts. 3 copies of Feed the Clan is interesting. Feed the Clan is 1 and a green, instant, gain 5 life. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater, which you most of the time will in this deck, gain 10 life.
It's good versus aggro. It's good versus decks. It good.
Yeah.
It do stuff good.
Yeah, 10 life apparently is just enough for pure life gain, that if you can reliably get it, it's just fine. 3 copies of Stone Rain is kind of interesting. 2 and a red, sorcery, destroy target land. I kind of would have expected to see Earth Rift here.
What does Earth Rift do? I don't know that
Earth Rift, I think, is 1 more red mana, but it also has flashback for 7. So you get to blow up 2 lands off 1 card, but maybe that's just a little too slow and the double red's too taxing. And then finally, the most interesting one, 2 copies of Tranquility, which is 2 and a green, sorcery, destroy all enchantments.
What a card.
Yeah, and also one that I don't think I've ever seen played in Pauper. You definitely see, like, sometimes the Serene Heart, the one that blows up all auras. But just
Tranquility is a little less common.
Yeah, just burn everything to the ground. So this deck, you're really trying to pump out a huge threat quickly before your opponent can kind of build up a board to answer it. Is this a deck that interests you? Like, would this be a kind of thing where you'd try it out?
Me personally?
Yeah, you.
No, if I'm playing Tron, I'm going to play the control variant.
Okay, that's fair. That was kind of my reaction to this as well. I think it's a really cool list. It just lacks kind of a little bit of punch. Like, with few ways to interact with edicts outside of, the accomplished automatons or having a fierce empath left over, it doesn't feel good against a lot of removal. I think you feel good against red removal, but then you're, probably against burn and they're just hitting you in the face with stuff. I don't know. I was always iffy on Rugtron to begin with, so taking away blue from Rugtron doesn't really appeal to me personally.
No, but that being said, I'm sure it's a fine deck. It is more in line with, I guess, what you might consider. It's more in line with what I think of the modern Tron deck to be like, which is pumping out fatties.
Yeah, except significantly less game ending. Although I've paid like vague attention to modern recently, and apparently like there's a ton of different Tron lists. Like there's one that uses the Eldrazi from Oath of the Gatewatch and like black cards to just kind of deny your opponent any sort of board state. I don't know. Tron is one of those things where it's always going to be getting abused somehow if it's in a format. In terms of cost for this, online it's about $50. In paper, it's going to be $76, and a good chunk of that is your stars and spheres along with the Urza lands.
Yeah, that's not too bad.
Yeah, the Urza lands open a whole like genre of decks to you, and the stars and spheres go into affinity as well. So I don't know if the deck appeals to you, give it a whirl. Maybe let us know how it goes for you. But
you do that now.
Unless you have any other thoughts, we got two discussion. What was that?
So let's just get to the good part. But no, that was fine. I'm just being a jerk.
All right. So first up on the discussion topics today, we got a tweet that showed up on Twitter. Well, not us particularly, but they're bringing a bunch of conspiracy cards, specifically Palace Jailer, which is seeing play in Legacy Death and Taxes, onto Mitgo because they're not already there. And this opens up the door for, do we get the Pauper cards? And I think the main ones that people have clamored for are Custody Squire, Thorn of the Black Rose, Sinuous Vermin, and Borderland Explorer. So from top to bottom, Custody Squire is 4 and a white for a 3/3 with flying. It is Will of the Council. When it enters the battlefield, all players pick a creature, artifact, or enchantment in your graveyard, and whichever one gets the most votes or is tied for the most votes gets returned to your hand. So 5 mana, 3/3 flyer with either a Gravedigger, Oromancer, or is there an Oromancer effect for artifacts? I don't know.
What's that? That dude who returns equipment. There's that guy.
All right, we'll go with that. But
iron, whatever.
It lets you get back something from your bin and provides a serviceable body in the air.
You know what? There's Sanctum Gargoyle.
There you go, Sanctum Gargoyle. So it's a Sanctum Gargoyle or an Oromancer or a Gravedigger stapled onto like a reasonably efficient evasive body. I don't know where the hell this goes. People always ask for it.
People think it would. I think people think that it would go into some sort of blue-white mid-range style control deck that also plays cards like Muldrifter.
Okay, I could certainly see that. Efficient flyer to recur back some of your value ETB effects. I can definitely see that. Not super exciting, but it is like 5 mana is going rate for a 3/3 flyer. Stapling on a pretty solid ETB effect. I can't see this being a problem for the format. I just can't really see the huge upside for it. But again, I'm always willing to be proven wrong.
It's also definitely a card that people have really, really wanted. So just getting it out there, I think, would open up a lot of doors just in terms of experimentation.
All right. So next on the list is going to be the Thorn of the Black Rose. And this is one where I'm not 100% sure it would be super healthy, but it's 3 and a black for 1/3 with Death Touch. And then when Thorn of the Black Rose enters the battlefield, you become the Monarch. And for those of us who didn't draft Conspiracy 2, being the Monarch means you get a little token, and at the beginning of each end step, whoever is the Monarch draws a card. But if someone ever deals combat damage to the Monarch, they become the Monarch.
Right.
So Black Control kind of likes this card, doesn't it?
Right, and a local player, Nathan, has actually played it in Teachings.
How did that turn out for him?
I don't know. we'd have to ask him. I mean, it was still in a sideboard when I borrowed the deck, but unfortunately, I didn't ever really bring it in against any of the decks I was playing against. It's more of a mirror breaker, because if you're playing as another teachings deck or another black blue control deck, like don't have a lot of creatures, and you become the monarch, and they can never not make you not the monarch, then you're just drawing 2 cards every turn, and you're able to bury them in card advantage.
And more specifically in that sort of mirror, you're drawing more cards than they are, which means you're going to draw more removal than they're drawing threats. So, even in these threat light decks, it makes their day even worse. That and like the fact that it trades for any threat on the ground is pretty nice. I don't know. I'm real bad at card evaluation for this sort of thing, but I can definitely see this becoming like a one-sided howling mine and making for some really nutty games.
Right. And yeah, because even if you kill the creature, you would still have to deal combat damage to the player to become the monarch, or play your own Thorn of the Black Rose, or your own rather monarch enabling card.
Yeah. But yeah, this is definitely one that I'm very, very intrigued by. Another black creature is Sinuous Vermin, which is 1 and a black for a 2/2, and it has the monstrous ability. So for 3 black, if this creature isn't monstrous, it becomes monstrous. Put 3 +1/+1 counters on it. So for 7 mana, you get a 5/5, and then it also has the text, as long as it's monstrous, it has menace. So for 7 mana, you get a 5/5 that needs to be blocked by at least 2 creatures. How do you feel about this?
It's kind of whatever, honestly. It's a little dude that gets bigger. I don't really know why you wouldn't just play Gurmag Angler.
Okay, that's fair. I'm just kind of thinking about this as it's a 2/2 for 2 in the early game, and then if it survives through to the late game, it just becomes this huge threat that's difficult to block. So personally, I don't know where it fits, but just the ability to be either an early trade, an early chump, or possibly a late game threat. I just like the fact that, if you're to the point where you have 7 lands on the board and you top deck this, you can just cast it out as a 5/5 with menace pretty much immediately versus, other 2 drops kind of waning in value over the course of the game.
Yeah, that's true.
Definitely not, going to break anything in the format, but again, it's one of those cards I would like to see what it does. Last on our list is the Borderland Explorer. And this one's an interesting one. 1 and a green for a 3/1. When it enters the battlefield, each player may discard a card. Each player who discarded a card this way may search his or her library for a basic land, reveal it, put it into his or her hand, then shuffle their library. So, this is a weird card. So a 3/1 for 2 mana is like an all right body.
Right.
This weird ramp effect.
Going rate.
Yeah, it's pretty much going rate. But usually that's kind of the body that you see in white, right? There's lots of white vanilla 3/1s for 2.
Right. But then the only thing that's bad about it is that it's symmetrical.
Yeah, it's a really weird effect, but in my mind, what it does is it means that if your opponent doesn't know that you're playing this, they're probably going to try and keep an opening hand that has enough land to do the things they want it to. So I'm thinking that they probably don't get as much mileage out of it. Game 1. Game 2, they can kind of say like, all right, I can play with the lands I've got, but if I had one more, that'd be sweet. So that way, your opponent can hedge that you're still going to play the Borderland Explorer. But yeah, it is kind of a very weird card because it is actually symmetrical after they know that it's there. Right. I don't know.
And of course, these cards are designed that way because of what am I trying to say? Because they're conspiracy cards.
Yeah, and conspiracy is intended to be a multiplayer format. I don't know. It's just personally, I don't know where the hell this thing goes, but it feels like, solid body plus interesting ETB effect could just be good enough for Pauper. So I would be excited if they gave it to us. Obviously people are going to try and jam this in a Madness deck, and
Yeah, and I think that sounds pretty much like where it's going to go, being able to make you discard things. Is it better than, well, the other thing is it gets you the land, right? So that's also really strong. And then you could recur it with Torx. I don't really know. It's a tricky one for sure.
Here, let me hit you with this. What about
Hit me with it.
What about turn 2 Borderland Explorer, discard something with Retrace, and get the land to retrace it?
I mean, that sounds pretty good. Then you get a 3/1. Oh, yeah. That's like basically all upside. Yeah, I like that.
Or even just like pitching something with Flashback and just getting your land. I don't know. Maybe that lands deck that we covered, I think it was 2 weeks ago, would really benefit from this.
Yeah, I could see that. That deck, what do you cut? I mean, I don't think that list is really locked in stone. We would have, I would be interested in revisiting that. That does seem pretty good.
Well, just because that deck's playing so much, so many flashback spells, so many retrace spells, that could just be, a free land, basically, quote unquote.
Right.
I don't know.
I can see that. I can see that. I like it.
And I mean, in a deck where you're running so many lands, it's kind of, the deck thinning aspect is not nothing. I don't know. It's just one of those bizarre cards where I can't tell you if it's good or not, but it sure is interesting, and it sure does have an adequate body for the mana cost. So
right, yeah. I think it's a fine card. I think it would definitely find a home. There's a lot of weird cards in Pauper that are like good but don't really have good homes. I think this one, I don't know what deck it might make better, but I think there is one out there that I could go into.
All right, so again, we'll see. The only thing I think that was confirmed for online release was Palace Jailer, because it is seeing play in a Legacy deck, but they did say that they would be released alongside, and this kind of segues into our next topic, they will be released alongside Modern Masters 2017 on MitGo, so we'll see. And with that,
let's go to the next topic.
Yeah, Modern Masters 2017 is happening.
And we're excited for spoiler season, and so should you be, because rarity downshifts.
Yeah. Rarity downshifts have been simultaneously great and horrible for this format. Obviously, if you if you have not joined us in, the past month or so,
if you've been living under a rock,
Peregrine Drake got downshifted and kind of almost accidentally killed the format.
But there are a lot of other good cards that got downshifted, so it's not a bad thing when something gets downshifted. It's just something that we should look forward to and anticipate, and then be horribly wrong about.
Yeah, and obviously, rarity shifts can occur in a standard legal set. It's just the Masters sets. So at one point,
why don't you read this quote? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to get into this quote. So most sets are bound by what's called the New World Order, and that's kind of the internal design code of, what makes a common, and it's low complexity, relatively low power level. And as you go all the way up to Mythic Rare, you can get more complicated, you can get more powerful effects. The Masters sets don't need to go through standard, and in an article this week, Sam Stoddard, who works at Wizards of the Coast, had an article entitled Complexity Creep, and he brought up the topic of the Master sets and the fact that they are not 100% bound by New World Order design. And he says, the other nice thing about how we are creating products now is that we have a place to put high complexity sets, and I'll be talking about one next week, Modern Masters 2017 edition. This is the set where the designers and developers get to go a bit deeper down the rabbit hole than usual and print some cards at common that would never fly in a standard legal booster release. There are some pretty exciting cards there at all rarities. It's my favorite Master set yet, but as the lead designer, I will admit to being biased. So
we're definitely going to get some sweet commons is what we're reading into this here.
Yeah, he legitimately mentions commons in his quote about how they can get more complex. So hopefully we get some stuff that's healthy for the format and, allows the format to grow and diversify and maybe shore up some decks that could use it. But end of the day, I feel like we at Color Commentary want to be positive about these sorts of releases. That said, the last time they did rarity downshifts, they kind of goofed a little bit and things did not go well.
But that was a great deck. Let's be real.
Like
what a deck that was.
I'm not going to argue that. I ran the deck a couple times and it did feel completely unbeatable, but that was kind of the problem.
You old fogies.
So every time one of these sets is about to get released, we get the inevitable deluge of threads on the Pauper subreddit and conversations online and pretty much everywhere. What do you think is going to get downshifted? Now, since this is a Modern Master set, it has to have been released since 8th edition. It has to not be banned in Modern. And I threw together a quick little list of things I think might be interesting considering as downshifts, and I just want to get right into it. I kind of want Pyroclasm in this format.
I'm okay with that. Honestly, we already have Electricity and Heaven Cars. It'll be fine. It'll be good. It'll obviously be played in Tron, and maybe nothing else. Maybe a blue-red control deck, but it'd be good to have like a real quasi board sweeper that's not $1 billion. A billion mana.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at is I was talking with some folks about this as, what would this do to Pauper? And it does kind of let the control deck get back from a big start out of an aggro deck when they're on the draw. It means that, against Stompy, when they start flooding out the board, if you can survive to turn 2 and hit your mana, you can probably wreck their board pretty decently. But late game, this isn't really getting any better, right? It's not like Justice where early game it feels bad to use it because it's kind of a win con, and late game you're just ending the game with it. This very much is kind of a come from behind sort of card.
Yeah.
And, there's other variants of Pyroclasm. I just want an early game semi-sweeper that lets red be more viable in control decks.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
How about you take this next one that I put on this list? Because I know that you know the text of this card by heart, and I know that you're going to be the one who argues strongly for it.
For it, maybe. The card is, if Pyroclasm is getting in the format, we're going to need a hero for the aggro decks. One that lets us get more damage in faster, and it goes in literally any deck. That card, of course, is Signal Pest. Everyone's favorite 1-drop 0/1 with Battle Cry cannot be blocked except by creatures with flying or reach.
Yeah, so Battle Cry is each other attacking creature. Yeah?
It jumps from position to position, revealing the enemies. I don't know, something like that's the flavor text.
Leaps from tree to tree, revealing the enemy positions. It also has very confusing art that everyone thinks is like a bird. But it's actually...
dude. I thought that's what it was as well for a long time. That's its hand.
Yeah, I've actually got it pulled up here. It's a weird illustration. Thanks, Mark Zug, for that one.
Yeah, so it looks like a bird that's like chittering, but really it's this insect-looking thing. Like it has its hand open and it's like shooting something. And then the promo art makes more sense. It's like this weird-looking little thing, and it's pointing and shrieking at something.
Yeah. So I will fully admit I kind of love the flavor of this card, that it's just like a military tool that just goes out and like shrieks at targets. But bring me the case for Signal Pest in Pauper.
I mean, I don't really know if there's a case, honestly. I don't know if the card is quote unquote too good, but it would definitely become ubiquitous within aggro decks because it's a free thing that buffs all your dudes that your opponents have to kill without really removing one of your big threats. Like it's just a really good card, and that's the role it plays in Modern Affinity. It's a 4 of in that deck, and you can just you play it in a Memnite, and they have to kill the Signal Pest.
So what I'm hearing from you is you'd be okay with this if Pyroclasm became legal. This as kind of the immediate answer to Pyroclasm.
Yeah, I think they balance each other out a little. Although, of course, if the Pyroclasm guy's on the play or person's on the play, then it's a little bit different. But I think they would both be very powerful additions to Pauper. Definitely very strong.
All right. Next, and these are both me. I wanted to talk about Kitchen Finks and its sibling Murderous Redcap. So Kitchen Finks is 1 generic and then a hybrid green-white for a 3/2. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life, and it has Persist, which is when it dies, if it didn't have a -1/-1 counter on it, return it to the battlefield with a -1/-1 counter on it. Murderous Redcap, on the other hand, let me just pull this guy up.
It's a red. So go ahead.
Murderous Redcap is 2 generic, a black red for a 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, it deals damage equal to its power to target creature or player, and it has Persist. I'm going to make the case that I think Murderous Redcap is absolutely fine in this format.
Sure. I mean, I would agree. I think it's big thing in Modern. So the creatures themselves aren't astounding. A 4-mana 2/2 with shock stapled to it isn't the greatest. What's great is that you can do it twice, and what's great is that it also goes into an infinite combo deck, right? Where you continuously sack it and destroy your opponent. So without that in there, without Malira, Silvok, whatever her name is, I think it's fine.
So on the other hand, I think Finks does power up the Ivy Lane Denizen combo deck. And
right. And I mean
that's the only reason I'm okay with Redcap is the fact that it's not green. Because if it was
I would
green,
also like to point out.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. What do you want to point out?
I just wanted to point out that Kitchen Finks will also get played probably in Stompy and also in White Weenie.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. I just kind of like the idea of having a black-red creature that's just kind of value nug your opponent when it enters the battlefield, and you get a second use out of it.
Right. I agree. I think they're both fine.
I would be hesitant about Finks just because it does set up an infinite life combo in a very janky deck. And maybe I'm a little gun shy on combo right now after the miniature Drake Winter. But I don't know. Redcap does not strike me as a card that breaks the format or anything.
Right. I agree with you.
Next up, I love me some very restricted counter spells. Spell Snare. So this is 1 blue, counter target spell with converted mana cost 2. That's it.
Now, this is of course crazy in Modern, where basically every good spell costs 2 mana. But in Pauper, that isn't necessarily the case. So I think it would be good, but I don't think it would be, just the best freaking thing ever. And as I believe has been pointed out before, maybe not on the show, it's not really counters or removal that are busted. It's really threats. So you can have extremely efficient removal and counters and still have a fine format. Yeah,
and I think with this one, it's just so incredibly narrow that to me it doesn't bother me. What is this countering in, for example, Stompy? In all
Nothing.
Seriousness, I don't think
Garrick's Companion, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, but it's not hitting the real big hitters in that deck.
No, I agree with you.
And it does help a blue deck win a counter war without having to main deck something like Dispel.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just one of those cards where it's interesting enough and it's weird enough that I really wouldn't mind it being in the format because, we've already got stuff like Prohibit and, even excludes and negates and that sort of stuff that, have their own restrictions on them and various upsides. Next on the list is kind of another weird counterspell. Guttural Response, which is a hybrid red or a green instant counter target blue instant spell.
I think that's fine. This card is from Shadowmoor. Obviously, we have Pyroblast, which is better, but it's fine.
But notably, Pyroblast can't be played in a mono green deck, whereas this can.
Exactly. So I think Guttural Response would be a fine card to put into the format. There's some decks that might run it as a one or two in the sideboard, but it wouldn't be anything like groundbreaking, you know?
Yeah. I don't know. I definitely think like there is certainly a level of feel bad that a lot of players experience with counterspells versus removal, which while I personally think it's silly, I can definitely understand the frustration with counterspells. And this does kind of, you know, give non-blue decks a way to play around with that without, you know, being on par with something like Pyroblast. Next on the list, how about you take this next one? Because I know that you have a fondness for this card because I know that you've played it in Standard, I believe.
Yeah, the card is Rakdos Cackler. It's a hybrid RB for a 1/1 that you can unleash, meaning it'll get a +1/+1 counter and can no longer block. And yes, this was the turn one play along with Stromkirk Noble back in the Ravnica Innistrad mono red deck, which was my first constructed tournament level deck. You would go Rakdos Cackler into Burning Tree Emissary into Lightning Mauler, attack for 6, next turn Boros Reckoner, turn after that Hellrider. And it was sweet.
Yeah, so Cackler can be played in either mono red or mono black, and both of those are colors that have had decks where, you know, you really want those 1 mana 2 power creatures.
And it would be an upgrade in Goblins, for instance. Like I could see you, instead of playing Jackal Pup, playing this instead, because this is much better than Jackal Pup.
Oh, sure. If you're on the sort of list that was running Jackal Pup, definitely. Like I would take the Cackler over Jackal Pup any day.
I mean, I guess you could run both, but then you'd have you'd have 16 of these 1-drop 2/2s. Rakdos Cackler is definitely the best of that bunch because not being able to block is like whatever in the mono red deck.
Yeah,
but not being able to attack is a lot worse.
If you're blocking, you're already probably losing that game.
Right.
Yeah, Cackler definitely is one of those ones where I'm intrigued. I don't think it would break the format in any way, shape, or form. It's just a very efficiently priced threat that can be played in 2 colors, and I don't think
you want to.
Yeah.
Sorry, I know this is tangential. The Mirror Breaker card in that standard, by the way, is another common called Volcanic Strength. 1 and an R for an enchantment. Enchanted creature has +2/+2 in Mountain Walk.
Wow.
That was like a 2 of in that sideboard so that you could win the mirror.
That was the key tech, just not letting them block.
Yeah, just having a 4/4 that was unblockable would just win you the game.
Okay, so yeah, I can definitely get down with Cackler. I think that's a totally healthy card. Do you have any other like things you'd like downshifted? I had one more that I didn't put on here, but since we're a little early,
well, I'll just talk about it.
I kind of wouldn't hate Inquisition of Kozilek, and I think part of that is me being a control player.
Sigh. Like blue-black control needs that. And no, I mean, I could see it. It's good, but what are you really hitting? You know, I don't know everything. I don't think it's as good as it might be in other formats, but let's be real, Mike. They just upshifted that to rare, so I find that being downshifted to common very unlikely.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the ones where I can fully admit that's mostly me being hopeful as a control player, and I don't think people should be expecting that or any of the other like premium discard spells.
Here's one that I think you might be interested in. What do you think of any of the Lucky Charms cycles being downshifted? Lucky Charms are the artifacts that whenever you play a spell of a specific color, whenever a player plays a spell of a specific color, the artifact controller gains a life. And so these could be Angel's Feather, Kraken's Eye, Demon's Horn, most specifically Dragon's Claw is the one that sees a lot of play. But there's also
as anti-burn tech, right?
Right. There's also the Magus staffs, which cost 3 instead of 2, and also trigger off of land drops.
But those ones I think only trigger off of you casting that color, right?
Correct. Or land enters the battlefield under your control. So those could be interesting, just like you said, as anti-burn tech or as mirror cards, because any deck could play them in the sideboard.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting, and I guess I hadn't realized that those had never been printed at common. I just kind of thought they were because they're just sort of very middling effects. But
yeah,
I don't know.
No, they are all uncommons.
I think I'd actually be pretty okay with that. I mean, admittedly, I think Dragon's Claw and Worm's Tooth are probably the only I could think seeing play.
Right, because those are red and green respectively.
Yeah, those are the colors where you're most likely to get the velocity of spells in order for the life to actually matter. I'm just not sure if, against... I guess, how much do they cost? They're 2 mana, right?
Right. They're 2 mana for the Darksteel ones, and they are 3 for the staves from M14.
I think I'm completely off the staves. I don't think, I think the big value in the Lucky Charms is the fact that your opponent casting stuff triggers them.
Right. Yeah.
Because the staves, like if you're in a situation where you can't cast spells or, you're not drawing lands.
We could even get the original ones, which are the ones that cost 1, and then you have to pay a mana every time you want to gain a life.
See, I don't like those. I think the Lucky Charms are that sweet spot where, it doesn't trigger off lands, but you're also not paying mana for it. And they're a 2-drop. Like, okay, if Burn's on the play, like if they go bolt, you're at 11, but each of their subsequent spells technically pings you for 1 less. I don't know that that increases it from 4 lightning bolts to kill you to what, 6?
Yeah, it effectively blunts 1 damage from each burn spell. So
I actually don't hate that, and it does give you a very sort of broad sideboard answer that certainly helps against decks that are pretty real in this format.
Right, and then if you can't play Circle Protection, you could just play one of these instead if you're not white.
Yeah, I actually kind of really like those. Do you have any other gems of wisdom you'd like to bring down for us of potential?
No, that
cards?
Was just the one. That's the only one I could think of, because like you said, they're middling effects that are uncommon for some reason and could easily be downshifted in a modern set because Dragon's Claw does see play. Yeah, I could definitely see that. Like the more I talk about it, the more I'm like, yeah, that actually seems fine and possibly playable. Because it's not like Burn and Pauper is getting better cards than modern Burn, and people still bring in Dragon's Claw. So I don't know. Make that a hell of a mirror match, though. Yeah, I would.
And also against goblins, like I can't help but feel like that's a big pain. Not perhaps quite as much as Circle of Protection, but probably pretty close. Yeah, no, that'd definitely be cool. I'm just trying to think at the end here. Just because so what are the 2 new blocks we get? We get Innistrad cards, and before anyone says something in the comments, we're not getting spider spawning at common. Please stop. I should have said that. I should have said that at the beginning of the segment, and I'm now just realizing that we are not getting spider spawning at common. It's not happening. And if we do, I will film a video of me eating a copy of Spider Spawning and post it to our YouTube.
All right. You heard it here.
But in all seriousness, like out of Innistrad, I can't think of anything else that I'd really, really want in the format that is dreadfully exciting. I could maybe make the case for Memories Journey because, again, I'm a garbage control player who wants to be able to shuffle 3 cards back into his deck. But
you garbage control player.
Yeah, I am the trash man. But I guess that pulls us up to an hour. This was fun and definitely blindsided me with the lucky charms that I never would have thought of.
Lucky charms.
All right.
Well,
yeah, you want to take us
thanks
out?
for joining us. Thanks for joining us today. Check below this video or the description of this podcast for details on where to find us. We'd like to remind you that if you're listening to this on a platform with reviews, they're always appreciated as they boost our visibility. If you've got a deck list or idea for a topic, feel free to contact us either via our website or by emailing us directly at colorcommentary@gmail.com. Special thanks to Pat's Games to Nell. Until next week, this is Adrian and Mike, and we are signing off for Color Commentary.